Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Sports Hut podcast. It seems like nobody showed up today, mainly because I'm doing the intro and nobody wants to hear it. It's kind of like playing for Man City. There's no many people here. So I'll go through everybody quickly. James has actually been physically sick today, so much so that his beard fell off. It coincides, though, with Celtic having his first trophyless season since 2010. We've got Bruce. Hi, Bruce.
Hello.
Bruce this week was doing a boycott of social media, and it did about as well as, because it started on Monday, as every other diet he's tried. So we will get started, and our first topic today is the Glasgow Derby. Bruce, did you watch the Glasgow Derby today?
I did not, but I listened to the full thing on the radio as I was going about bits and bobs today, and managed to catch up with some of the highlights later on the day. A pretty good game for Rangers, but all in all, not overly exciting. Celtic didn't really bring much to the table, and even when they managed to get a penalty, they didn't manage to convert it. So I think today's game just summed up the season so far in terms of just how both sides of the city have been so far.
James, being the Celtic fan, what was your views on the game today?
Well, I was the same as Bruce. I didn't watch it live. I had some miscellaneous tasks to do, but I watched the highlights, and it sums up Celtic season. A little bit timid, lack of defence. Why Laxalt started before Greg Taylor, I don't know. Particularly Taylor's been playing well in the past couple of weeks. Edward Elyounoussi didn't turn up. So it's the big games this season. We haven't turned up. We've also not turned up for many other games, but particularly the big games where you expect the team to be motivated. It was the last remaining chance to win a trophy this season, and team didn't turn up, and we got what we deserved.
I mean, as a neutral between the ugly sisters of Scottish football, watching the game, Celtic did have the better of the game. I would say the better chances. Obviously, had the penalty. Had a couple of players that looked a threat. I do like Aribo for Rangers, though. He's definitely a talent. He was involved in both the goals. But you've got to say with Rangers' 2 goals, the first goal was a rebound that popped up, and fortunate enough it fell to Stephen Davis just at the right place for me, hit an overhead kick. And the second one was just a ball in the box that the defender couldn't get his foot around to get past the post. I mean, is that luck on Rangers' side, or is that just persistence, Bruce?
I think the way football is, you take your chances, don't you? And if you don't take your chances that are given to you, then you're going to end up, as was shown with Celtic, you're going to end up losing the game. And these chances can be margins. For example, Rangers' first goal came with their only kind of real chance at the first part of the match, and as you say, it just happened to travel towards Stephen Davis, who managed to put it in the back of the net. And again, as I say, I suppose it's just, as you say, it could be luck. It's just capitalising on those chances, isn't it?
Well, I've not seen the stats yet, but I think Celtic would have won the match on expected goals.
I would agree with that. I also haven't seen the stats, but it is Celtic had 16 shots. The Huns had 9 shots, and Celtic had 5 on target, and the Huns had 4 on target.
Well, I'm so glad by expected goals, James, are going to be lifting the trophy.
I know. That's one criticism that Celtic have had one criticism that many fans have had about Celtic this season, which is we're not been taking the chances. Edward is the top goal scorer in the league, but he's not been anywhere near top form, and he's not an out-and-out number 9. We paid £4.5 million for Yeti. Started off, was it 6 goals in 7 games or something like that? And then Lennon dropped him for Lee Griffiths, who came back from pre-season overweight. and it just must have totally demotivated Ayeti. It definitely demotivated Klamala, who's off to New York Red Bulls now. And yeah, the squad has been poorly managed this season. Recruitment has been bad. The coaching has been bad. The managing has been bad. And yeah, at every level, Celtic have just, for whatever reason this season, capitulated. And even today, when the team came out, I've already mentioned Greg Taylor being dropped, but why did we go for Scott Brown? He just looked off the pace again. And statistically, as well as just on the eye, Sorrow has been the better player this season. And we've went for sentimentality over actual output of the game. But if you're going to allow Scott Brown to win one final trophy with Celtic, you have to win this game. And that means putting out the best team because you're playing. I know John Kennedy said that we are the best team in the league, but obviously not. And you have to put out your best team to try and win the game. And we didn't. We went with sentimentality over the players that should have been picked. And that's what's cost Celtic this season, amongst many other things.
So, James, what's our new manager? Possibly Eddie Howe, possibly, obviously nothing confirmed with that yet. What's a new manager looking at with Celtic and what they're seeing? Is it a complete overhaul? Is it there's things there to improve on? Or
complete overhaul. The first thing that I would recommend is finding the local church and start praying, because it's going to be quite a job. Looking at the team and the squad as a whole, who do you actually want to be there next season? You've got Callum McGregor. There's a few, but
Turnbull.
McGregor, Turnbull.
Goalkeeper's a position. I mean, I would like. I kind of like Aya. I think he's away though. I think he's
gone.
Already.
Laxalt's gone. Aya's gone. Kenny will be gone. Brown's gone.
I can't see any of the strikers still being there.
Yeah.
Either by Celtic's choice or their choice. So it's a complete rebuild squad. Whereas, I mean, Bruce, what's your feelings on Rangers for who are they going to be able to keep hold of next season? So there is talk of Kent Morelos, again, half the team. Stephen Davis is a geriatric just about now. So's the goalkeeper.
So we have a fair bit of experienced players in our team, but as you know, it's no secret that you need a bit of experience in amongst the kind of the youth that's coming through to provide a good stable squad. Obviously, McGregor signed his contract. There's talk of Kent going, but there was a failed transfer before, so can we keep him? Well, we have to let him go. We've got a good squad just now, and hopefully we can keep as many as possible, so we can build on that going forward. When you've got a season as successful as this one was, you want to build on that, don't you? You want to try and keep the momentum going. But what I was going to say to James was, so is today's result another telltale sign of the state of behind the scenes, James?
I don't think it's a tale of what behind the scenes. I think it's just the season has been a poor season. There's just something not clicked at Celtic. I don't think there's been a personality fallout. I just think poor decisions have been made. Neil Lennon shouldn't have got the job when he got the job, and we've been in a slow decline since then, other than the period just before the season ended last season. And then, in all reality, if it weren't for 10 in a row, Edward would have been sold this season. Ayer probably would have been sold, and we would have reinvested in the team with players who were hungry and determined to win. And that's Celtic's business model. And if you hold a couple of players too long in that type of business model, they become unhappy, and then that impacts the rest of the squad. So it could be those big personalities influencing the morale in the team, as well as bad management. So I understand why they did it, but I can only imagine the fans' reaction if Edward and I were sold before the 10 in a row season. It'd be an outcry. But sometimes, if you're in the board, you have to go above that and be brave and bold with your decisions rather than try and appease the fans and ultimately backfire, which it has.
I mean, when you
So,
speak
James-
about Edward, there was 3 big chances for Celtic. First one was Elanusi's first touch that was maybe 8-10 yards out. His first touch was too hard, and then didn't manage to get a second touch. Edward's penalty, obviously, Lee Griffiths came on and won a penalty, and Edward took it. It's a poor penalty, especially against somebody like McGregor, who you're expecting to get over the corner. And there was also Edward's stupid pirouette volley thing with outside his foot that just looked like something that you do at a play park. I mean, I'd have to worry about, if I was Edward's agent, I'd have to worry about other clubs sort of watching Edward perform and thinking, I really want to buy him.
I think he's got a track record with Celtic, which shows that he is a good player. And then the annoying thing about this season when it comes to Edward is every time he's went over to play for the French under-21s, I think he scored 4 goals every international break. And you go, what's happening? I think there was a tactical switch. I think they play 4-3-3 and Edward plays on the left of the front 3. And that suits his game, cutting in. Whereas Celtic play him up top, and I don't think he is a number 9.
No.
But he's a good enough player. He should be able to hit a better penalty than what he did. He can. We've seen that many a time. And yeah, too many times this season he has overrun with the ball when he should have just took a shot. It's like he's trying to score the perfect goal with the criticism that many fans had about Arsene Wenger and Arsenal. It's like, just take the shot, not make the perfect goal.
James, last one point from me, kind of. So tomorrow, Dominic Mackay comes into Celtic to work in conjunction with Peter Law. So you're Dominic Mackay, you're coming in off the back of that result today. There's the shambles with Eddie Howe at the moment of, is he coming, isn't he coming, what's happening? We're in this kind of middle ground of not knowing. We're getting one thing from, the media and then one thing from Eddie Howe through the media. You've got to try and sell it to the fans to get revenue in season tickets, but why would people put money in season tickets when they don't know who's going to be leading the ship yet and what state of affairs we're going to be in? So what has got to happen from Dominic Mackay coming in to get the trust of the fans to give the money over for the season tickets?
Don't press the panic button. It is, I've said it many times on this podcast, football is a very emotional sport. If something goes wrong, people expect immediate changes. But at business level, and ultimately it is a business, you have to take a step back and be rational. And that means appointing the right man. And I would again stress that a director of football should be appointed before a manager. So I would not be surprised if the first thing that Dominic Mackay sets on is a director of football. I think that's the thing holding back Eddie Howe. He wants to bring his own person in from Bournemouth. But in what other private sector company would the staff member appoint the director? There's absolutely none. The director has to appoint the staff member. And that's why I would say director of football first.
You've got to take into account as well. I mean, there's usually 2 or 3 different ways that you can come into a football club. One way is when the club's doing really badly, so that they've fired their staff because they're doing badly, and you're coming in, you're trying to steady the ship. That way is not too bad because anything that goes wrong in your first few months, you can blame on the prior people in charge. And then there's people who, obviously Neil Lennon, who came in when Rodgers was doing everything well, he then tried to change things slightly and obviously went to shit. So I don't think Mackay's in that bad position. He's actually, as far as the fans see, or the fans will know, everything he does now will be good because they've been shite this season. They've just not competed enough or not produced enough on the results scale.
I would slightly disagree with that in the sense of Celtic is a club with so high expectations that if we perform poorly in the Champions League qualifiers and ultimately are knocked out even of the Europa League before August, the fans will get very anxious very quickly. And if Rangers start the season well and are a couple points clear on top of a poor European performance, we will be in a very anxious situation. And that's when a director of football with the long-term vision comes key, to ensure that that plan's there. And again, don't press any panic buttons.
So I think just to wrap up the conversation of the city being red, white, and blue once again.
I thought it voted yes.
Can Celtic and Dominic Mackay turn around the fortunes and challenge Rangers next season? James?
I think so. We'll get a lot of money in for Edward Ayer. We've already got $3.5 million in coming from Klamala, which is just a magic trick by Lawwell. How he managed to get that, I don't know. So I think there's going to be money there, and with a little bit more of a structure around our recruitment, I think we'll be there or thereabouts next season.
Martin?
I think the Celtic already agreed that the Griffiths has got a place there next season. Once they offload Griffiths back to Hibs, I think Celtic will probably turn things around. I think they'll actually do pretty well next season. They haven't been that far off everything. It's just been like, I spoke about 3 chances there against Rangers today. That was 3 chances they should have scored, as well as a couple of half chances. They have had that in the games just about all season where they've just not capitalised on things. So if they get their keeper right and get the players in to do the job, then I think they will be there or thereabouts next season. It'll be a lot closer, at least.
And it'll be no surprise to you that I think you'll be a little bit closer, but you'll not be quite on the money, because I just think we'll get a little bit stronger again than what we have been this season.
Yeah, you'll get stronger when you get ready again. Right, so as we go from Rangers and Celtic and everything else to do with Scottish football, we'll trip over to Italy and Formula One in Emilia Romagna. I tried to pronounce that right, but that was terrible. Emilia Romagna. So, did everybody watch at least highlights of the Formula One today? I watched it live, and honestly, I've got about 12, 13 different points to go over because there was everything happening at the Formula One. It was, the main talking point was the weather, and that actually made it an extremely interesting race, especially when just before the lights went out from the start, it was pissing down on one side. The lights went out in James's room as well. But it was pissing down one side of the racetrack, and it was bone dry the other side. Then tyre choices came into play, and there was so much happening. James, do you have any feelings on before I go over each individual points?
I thought it was one of the more exciting races of Formula One in recent years. The fact that the person in pole didn't win is also a nice change. And I thought, the weather and the different aspects of the track and how the teams had to take that into consideration, with some wet, some dry, and a couple of crashes as well. So it had everything, as you said.
So speaking of crashes, Georgie Boy Williams taking out Bottas. Oh, how did the Williams team fare this week? Both of them didn't finish. I think we should go to our Williams correspondent in this. Bruce, how did Williams do this race?
Not very well.
I can't see the bosses being too happy at Mercedes with him taking out Bottas at the same time.
I don't think Bottas will be very happy. Never mind the bosses at Mercedes. I was quite excited because Russell was kind of holding his own at one point. He was sitting 10th.
He was,
but for a decent part of the race, and I'm very excited. As the biggest Williams fan on the planet, Gav, have a drink. As the biggest Williams fan on the planet, since I've found this new allegiance over the past 6 weeks, to see Williams in 10th was quite exciting. But that all just went pear-shaped rather quickly.
Can I ask who this Russell is? I thought his
name
was
Russell is sometimes what Georgie Williams is known as.
Okay.
It's his alter ego.
Okay, that's good to know. Mm-hmm.
Right, so looking through a couple of the finer points of the race, obviously, most of the time within racing, everybody's worried about first and second. So I'll start with that. Verstappen getting his first pole of the season and managed to take over Hamilton in the second corner, catching Hamilton a little bit with that. I think what was more important with it was Hamilton managed to spin out with the track being as it was so wet. Then you have a racing line, so you've got the racing line that's dry because obviously these cars are going over 200 miles an hour dry. That just means that your overtaking lanes are wet. So Hamilton's tried to overtake at one point, then couldn't stop, had no control, went off. Fortunately, managed to reverse back onto the track after a little while, and then he was 9th. And this was the immaculate timing that Georgie Boy Williams decided to go into Bottas, at which point there was a red flag. Everybody back in the pit lanes. Now, Hamilton was 1 lap back from first place with no chance of finishing anywhere near the podium. The red flag then put them all back to the pit lane, and they all started in a safety car, which meant everybody started in order behind. So really, Hamilton was only a couple of seconds away to first place at that point, and he was able to get back through the pack and into second place, which is a really good drive for him, especially after spinning off. I can see Verstappen and Hamilton being really interesting this year.
Yeah. That's one thing that got me. I think I've made it pretty well known that I'm not the biggest follower of Formula One. But when there is a red flag and the race is brought to a halt, it does seem kind of unfair that a lead that people have built up is just evaporated. Because hypothetically, say that you needed a championship win to become world champion, couldn't your teammate just cause a red flag scenario so your 20-second gap behind first place can drop down to a second and then you can overtake from there? It's a bit unfair.
There is parts of your teammates working for each other. For example, Norris and Ricciardo were sitting, I think they were sitting maybe 6th or 7th, 8th, 9th or something. And Norris had said to his team that, right, I'm going faster than the guy in front, who's my teammate. Tell him to pull over and let me past. And the team said, right, Ricciardo, pull over, let Norris past. And Norris managed to get himself up to 3rd place. So yes, working as a team, you can do things like that. There is stewards inquiries. There is racing officials there that will combat anything untoward. And obviously it has happened. But yeah, it's working as a team, working using the rules. It is an interesting sport when you get into the dynamics of it and especially the tactics. But yeah, that does happen, James. Yeah.
So Martin, when you were talking there, so I'm only just starting to get my head back into Formula One. Watched it ages ago, but it's a totally different sport from when I last watched it. And in the past week or so, I've watched all 3 seasons of Drive to Survive. And Drive to Survive is such an amazing documentary. I didn't actually realise how good it was until I started watching it. In terms of giving you all the kind of behind the scenes, stuff that you wouldn't normally see. And I didn't quite realise how much went on behind the scenes in terms of, as you said, like stewards inquiry, going to the officials and saying, look, what about this? What about that? Like, it goes on, but it's not until you actually see it happening, and teams coming together to work together if there's something to see that isn't right, to stamp it out. Which I thought was good as well.
Yeah, I think looking at the penalty for the Stewart and Priory Park things, both Perez and Patel had 10 points, 10-second penalties, two different types of 10-second penalties as well. Perez was right doing, I think he finished 11th, which Perez is Red Bull. So the way the standards work, you want both it's a driver's championship, which is kind of the most important thing. So you want both of your drivers to be within the points. Obviously, Verstappen came first, his teammate came 11th, so 10th is your points. And then you had Hamilton, who came first, and then Bottas, who didn't finish because George Russell crashed into him. And it's really important to try and get your teammates, both parts of the team, up into the points. I mean, Ferrari, they finished 4th and 5th. I think they might be quite a surprise package this year, especially after I said in the earlier podcast, I thought it was only going to be Red Bull, McLaren, and Mercedes that was involved in anything, but Ferrari seem to be including themselves within the race finishes. With 4th and 5th is quite an achievement for them.
I think there's quite a few drivers in teams that. So you were talking about Norris and Ricciardo with McLaren. I think quite a few drivers this year in teams that quite suit each other. So I quite like Sainz and Leclerc. Norris and Ricciardo. There is drivers that in some of the teams this year that really complement each other, whereas in other years, after watching the Drive to Survive again, I didn't really see it until watching the documentary. But there is sometimes there's been that animosity in the team. That they try to keep under wraps, obviously, because it's not good for their image. But this year in particular, I personally think there's a few drivers that really complement each other in the teams.
I think you have to take into account as well. George Russell and Bottas and Hamilton all go to Mercedes driving school, so right. They're all trained the same way. The other one,
I've got a theory about George Russell, getting his name right there, and why he crashed today. I think he was on his phone scrolling Facebook because his biggest fan had stopped the boycott. And he got distracted and went right into Bottas. That's plausible.
Definitely. Do you know something? There is maybe a chance that George Russell will get in touch with us and confirm or deny your rumour.
I'll send him an email and just ask.
Surely reply as well. The only other player, driver that I wanted to mention is Tsonga, the Japanese boy who done really well. Mitchell mentioned him the first race. Again, he had a good race. He managed to get 10 places up. And just as Mitchell put in the group chat saying that Tsonga was doing really well, he then went to the toilet and Tsonga spun out and lost. I think he was back to the last place, but he managed to pick up again. He's definitely a driver to watch for.
Is he driving for what is Renault?
Yes, I believe so.
Alpine,
yeah.
Alpine, yeah. Cool.
But yeah, there's so many things that, I mean, is this changing your view on Formula One at all, James? Obviously the wet track and everything obviously added something to the race, but is it something you're going to continue to be interested in, Jamie?
I think I'm still in my spell of flirtation with Formula One. For those who...
Which can I just add is closer than he gets in any other situation.
That's what I was going to say anyway. You just stole it from me, so thank you for taking that up. But no, yeah, it's okay. I'm 2 episodes into Drive to Survive, and that's took me 2 weeks to achieve. So I'm averaging an episode a week. So yeah, engaged, thrilled, captivated.
So, getting there slowly.
Yes.
It's definitely a sport depends on what you want to watch with it. I know Gavin and Shahan, they're both right into the qualifier and the times and everything. Then they'll go. It's a 3-day process for them. Watching everything, the testing, the qualifying, the actual race. I'm quite happy just to watch the race, see who's in pole, sort of watch the highlights of who's done the qualifying, and then watch the race. Because as I say, the race there was so much happening. I mean, they spoke about what was the other thing they had. They had Verstappen, who eventually won the race. He managed to take over Hamilton on the second corner, but that was more down to him starting in second gear, which isn't really a done thing. He started first gear as usually, but he's started in second gear in the intermediate tyres. A couple of people changing from tyres early, and Hamilton had the chance to go to start to winning the lead of the race when Verstappen went in, changed tyres first. Hamilton's took another lap, and if Hamilton's pit crew had been a little bit quicker, Hamilton would came in front of Verstappen, which probably would have put him into winning the race. He got a 4-second tyre change with the front right-hand tyre not coming off quick enough, as opposed to a 2-second one. I mean, it's definitely interesting in a lot of different things, and it's not just the start of the race and the first couple of corners. Everybody's sort of probably a bit more worried about the who's winning the race, first, second, third. But there's a couple of other parts of the race. Schumacher, who spun off as well, and I think there's just like 3-4 different parts of the race that just seem to be really interesting, and it gets into statistics as well. I mean, all the statistics involved with it are really get very interesting. But I think that's enough on Formula One statistics, and we could probably move on to the statistics that are involved in football. Now, James, you are extremely into statistics. Some may say even more than results, and you want to talk a little bit about that.
I do. I've mentioned expected goals, expected assists in the podcast a few times recently. So that's why I thought it might be a good idea to discuss the topics in greater detail and to explain why I'm so keen about the statistics, but also know and hear your reservations about the statistics. So I think that's how I'll begin. The reasons why I like statistics is that I think it tells you more about performance rather than results. It tells you what could have been if the statistical probability of a run, and removes that variance of luck, which does happen in football. And I think when you're judging a manager's performance, judging a season, I think it would be very harsh to sack a manager who's slightly underperformed results-wise, but his team's actually been performing better than expected. It indicates that better results will come around the corner. And I also think it's the same with players. Like Jesse Lingard, I think, is a good example recently. A lot of people are crediting his performances at West Ham, but actually his expected goals is half of what he has been scoring. So that indicates that he'll be going through a dry patch in the future, and thus should be avoided from a fantasy football team, Martin.
Yeah, I really have an eye on that.
But it's just that's the way that I see the game. I think it's going into that direction where statistics will be that far up to speed in the game, wherein you're going to have the data analysis teams phoning the manager and saying, if you bring this player on, you'll actually change the expected goals output. And not even expected goals, there'll be more advanced metrics, such as the pressing and packing variations, which are coming out now. I think they will take over, and the data analysis teams will phone up managers and say, if you bring this player on and take this player off, your probability of winning the game will increase by this amount. I think that's how it's going to go. It takes the luck element out of managers' judgment, the bias out of managers as well. Managers do have the biases, fans have the biases, superstitions. I think it just takes that all out to account and actually judges players and how they play rather than luck. So that's why I'm into statistics. But Bruce, you've been one to, not mock, but make light-hearted comments about my eagerness on statistics. So what are your reservations about them?
Mock.
I don't mock James. That's unfair. Statistics are good. As you say, they provide insight on performance, and I can kind of half see where you're coming from. However, it's a result-based business. Every job, no matter what job it is, every job has targets and deadlines. And if you're employed in a position, those targets and deadlines have to be met. That is why we have targets and deadlines. That is why these things are in place. So we have something to aim for and achieve.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anybody who would sit back, apart from James, possibly, and go, do you know, we're sitting sixth, but we've played an absolute blinder this season. Do you know what I mean? When you should have been maybe aiming for first or second.
I'm a Hibs fan.
And so for example, the best thing I heard on the radio today that I feel outlines when we talk about performance versus results. Do you know, football isn't like, for want of a better example, figure skating, when the judges are all going to hold up 7s and 8s and 9s and go, do you know what, well done. It's results. You put the ball in the back of the net, that's obviously a goal, which then brings points if you win the match. Points bring trophies. Trophies bring money.
I take that point on board, but then if you are a director of a club and you are judging your team's performance over the season and say that you won the league, but on the more advanced metrics, when I talk about statistics, I'm not talking about possession or shots on target. I think those forms of data are outdated. I don't think you'll be seeing them pretty soon. I'm talking about probabilities and expected goals, expected assists, and the metrics that build on them. And they do judge individual player performances. It's not like a newspaper column where you'll get keeper 8, even though they conceded 4 goals, because he's managed to save about 10 shots. There's a lot of biases in those judgments. Managers make those judgments, fans make those judgments, and that's, again, bias and emotion coming into it. So when you say nobody judges the players and the team, they do. So this will allow a more accurate judgment that gets rid of bias, which is very important when you're trying to get something to the point. When you talk about results-based, I was starting that example and got distracted. But if you're winning the league, but your the expected points matrix is saying that you should actually finish 4th, that's an indication that your long-term success is going to be pretty null and void. You're not going to have any success in the future. You're going to tail off. Whereas if you're first in the expected points but coming 4th, it means you should stay calm because results are going to pick up. And that's the judgment that the directors should be making. They should be looking at performance and long-term projection. Yes, you might not be meeting a target of a hard deadline, but the indication is that if you were patient, you're going to meet that target in the following season. So I think that element of it's a results-based business. It is a results-based business, but these statistics show the probability and the possibility of reaching those results rather than saying just because something's good just now, it's going to be good in the future.
So, James, you lost in the Scottish Cup today, but if you're higher in expected goals, that's okay. That's okay not to be winning any trophies this season, because it's okay because today you won an expected goal, so that makes everything all better.
Well, the obvious answer is no. The obvious answer is no. You want to win a game. That's the point of football. So no fan should be leaving the stadium saying, we played better but lost, thus I'm happy. you want to win, and that's what should determine your happiness as a football person. But when you're making business decisions, you shouldn't be basing it on emotion. It should be looking into the future. And if you're playing all season and you should be winning the games, it indicates that performances are good. It indicates that in the future and the chance of variance, and that happens in football. There's so many events in football, you have to expect the unexpected, and you can't take that into account. It's the standard deviation for all those who want to be brought back to standard grade maths that you'd have to take into account. But that will change, and that luck will come to your team, and you will get the results from it. So I think the director should be looking at the data and saying, right, we've been winning expected goals all season. Maybe we don't need to sack the manager. It might just be we need to get a better striker to score the goals and finish the chances, or we need a better goalkeeper because we're conceding too many goals compared to what we should be conceding, rather than the
Before I let Martin get his say, because I realised that I've not given Martin a chance to talk yet, just quickly. So if I like my voice to be heard, especially when it's a topic that James is involved in.
You like the sound of your voice? We've never thought it.
only when there's an argument to be had with James, I'm right in for it. So if Neil Lennon had been winning expected goals all season, which I don't know because I don't look at expected goals because I'm a results man, you would have been looking for the board to be keeping them on, because that's what you've just said.
No, it is what I've just said, and answer would be yes. But the statistics are that we weren't. That's the answer.
So I'd like to follow this up, because obviously both yourselves are fans of the old firm, the Ugly Sisters within Scottish football, and I actually enjoyed watching football. Although you're both sort of obviously, and it is a result-based business, that finishes a lot of things. It's an entertainment industry. It needs to be, you can fill the seats in the stands. You get sponsors. Yes, some of that comes from results. It also comes from fair play. It comes from other things that will come into it. Especially when you look at teams within the Premiership, teams like Brighton, who play good football. They'll improve. They'll get better. Yes, they need results to stay in the league, but they're not going to win every game. So you have to. There is games where the lower end of the table are going to go up against the top end of the table, and they're not expecting to win. As a team, if a team is a lower end of the table, you're not expecting to win against Man United, Arsenal. Well, you're expected to beat Arsenal because they're pish. Man City, Liverpool. You're not expected to win those games.
Tottenham, you're expected to beat them.
But you're looking to get performances, to actually get in, to get within a goal, to have chances, and there is the expected goal side of that. I mean, you probably haven't had the pleasure of sort of going to some of the various places in Scottish football, like Palmerston, Dingwall, Tynecastle. I mean, sometimes you've got to go to these places and you've got to win games that aren't very nice games of football. But as a Hibs fan, the amount of games that I'll go to that obviously 10, 15 years ago, there wasn't expected goals coming out. But you would think, right, how the fuck did we not win this game today? And you know that it's coming because you're playing well, you're getting there, you're getting chances, and you're either creating chances and you've not got the strikers to finish them. And this is without using XP. If you're constantly creating chances and not scoring goals, then that's an issue, and it's an issue that the manager has to solve. He needs to have the data to say, right, we're creating 6 chances but no scoring goal. Right, strikers, out the training pitch. Let's practice scoring goals like you haven't been doing that the rest of your life. But there is certain points of football that you need the data to make yourself better. But it isn't all about winning games. All the teams at the bottom of the table, they just want to try and stay in the top league. And I think being Rangers and Celtic fans, you'll miss that.
But Martin, so I totally see the point of the data, and I totally see the use of the data in these teams, right? But you stay in the league by getting results. You stay in the league by getting points. If you go through the season not picking up points, but sitting and saying, "Oh, we played well," and you end up in the bottom league or the lower league, your job's on the shaky coat peg.
Yes, but you've got to take into
You need the points.
Like there's teams. You look at some of the teams, and James is right when he says the possession. That's going to be going. Yeah, nobody cares about possession anymore because so many teams now set up not to have possession. They've set up to say, right, have possession, have as much possession as you want, but we'll build a wall across 25 yards out to our box. We'll have 5 players sitting up close there, one sitting up front, and you'll just not break us down from there. You can pass the ball as much as you want to keep the ball, and our game is hitting you in the counter attack. And you can see it in the possession stats. When you see the expected goals in possession, you see that sometimes they don't coincide. Just because you've had more possession, it doesn't mean that your expected goals are any higher. Because a lot of the teams are set up to counter attack these things. And I just feel that it is important to have the statistics. There's a point where you've had the statistics long enough that it's then the manager's fault. Okay, you kind of keep saying we'll be playing well, no scoring, we'll be playing well, no scoring, we'll be playing well, no scoring, and then for somebody to come along and say, well, that's been 6 years we've been playing well and no scoring. What's happening? Okay, at some point you've got to have turned the screw and say, right, we've brought the striker in because we've been producing crosses for the wing. So we've now got a 6'7" striker who's going to convert those chances, or something along the lines of that. You have to be making changes to coincide with your statistics.
But I think it also comes to like managerial appointments. Like Tottenham, there's a good chance that Mourinho will be leaving pretty soon. And if you're looking at the table, you'd probably be looking at, I don't know, Arsenal. They're an up-and-coming team in the league. But no, like you'll be looking at the teams just below you in the league. And you'll be saying, what manager do I want from there? And the temptation would be to go for the manager with the team highest up in the league that you could get. That's just how football thinks. But
I heard Neil Lennon's looking for a job.
Yeah. But if you look at the expected points table, you'd see that Brighton should be scoring about 12 more goals than they have, and they should concede less than about 10 goals less than they have, 10 goals fewer than they have. And that indicates that the manager is doing wonders with the team that he's got. They've not got a striker and they've not got a goalkeeper, but the team itself is performing very well. And if you're Tottenham board member, you should be looking at that and saying, right, we have Harry Kane who will score those chances. We do have Hugo Lloris who's better than Sanchez in the Brighton goals. Yeah, if we get Brighton's manager in, he might actually do that for us. He might turn us into a team that should win, rather than like just now, West Brom picked Sam Allardyce because he's a manager who gets results. He's not this season, but he gets results even though the statistics show that he's always a team that should be getting relegated. He just gets the variance. And if you're taking the decision to appoint a manager, you should be appointing those who get the team to perform rather than those who have luck on their side, because the chances are they're going to run out of luck when you hire them.
I think you're always going to have an overachieving team. I think you look at certain teams in the league and you think, right, Everton, Aston Villa, start of the season, both of them, they overachieved. I mean, Everton were top of the table for a while. Aston Villa were within things. They've since dropped down. I would say that they'll probably end quite strongly. But I think, as far as statistics go with it, they work to an extent. You have to use the statistics. It's all about the people who use the statistics to make a difference in the sport. So your manager then has to say, right, our defenders be crap, so I need to buy a defender, or I need to change the shape, or I need to do this. Unless you're actually using the information that's given in, it's all good and well saying, right, and that's 2 weeks in a row. I did actually check the expected goals in the Rangers Celtic game, but actually, after watching the highlights, I would expect Celtic to have a better expected goals than Rangers. Hibs also had a better expected goals than Rangers. Again, both games, a couple of lucky goals, ball bounced, but that's going to come down to the attitude and application for the players. So you can't take that out of the game. But I want to see a good brand of football, so I'd expect my team to have a good expected goals throughout a season.
The point about expected goals, expected points, is that they average out across the season. If you look at players in the actual output versus their expected goals, for example, it does average out. There's only one player in the world who does outperform their expected goals year in, year out, and that is Messi. He gets about 10 more goals a season than he should get on expected goals, and that's probably because of his finishing. But look at Ronaldo, Lewandowski, everyone in that bracket, they score what they get on expected goals, which just shows that it's more about positioning rather than finishing, which determines what a good striker is, which is another tweak about how managers will manage the game. And it's just something, it's bringing in a new type of thinking into football. It brought a new type of thinking into baseball and American football and rugby. But with football, it's slightly difficult just because the sport's more continuous, and it will be that adaptation. And there's so many variables in football you can't take into account. And what I'm advocating is not a manager who has got his physics degree from Harvard University becoming the manager. No, that's somebody behind the scenes to help the manager. But the manager has to be a football person who has a feel for the game, who can understand tactics, understand football, and understand how to coach the players to make them better.
And brings in results.
Brings in performances. The managers, the job of the data analytics is support the manager and support recruitment. You cannot have data managing a team. It just won't work. Football's personalities, and the manager has to be in charge of the personality. But to round this up very quickly, because this could be a very long topic, Martin, would you, if you were a director of a football club and had to appoint a new manager, would you base it off results, or would you base it off expected goals, expected points?
I would base it. I think a lot of it would be to do with the expected goals, expected results. I think sometimes results is a byproduct of playing well. I think if you consistently play well week in, week out, you will win games. You can't play well without winning games throughout the course of a season or a career. So yeah.
Bruce, I think I know your answer, but results or expected goals or expected points?
Well, I think if I'm picking a manager, I'm basing it on achievements throughout the season. For example, with Eddie Howe, what he did over the 5 years, the promotions over the 5 years, the 5-year period, bringing Bournemouth up. I think that's what would signal to me that a manager's worth bringing on board.
Yeah, good to know.
James?
I think I'm pretty clear. I would appoint
Graham
manager based on their Graham Potter, but expected goals, expected points, and yeah, because you can have a manager like, I think the best example is Claudio Ranieri. He won the league against all the odds. People were thinking, what a fantastic manager. If you actually look at the statistics, Leicester, they just had a one-off fluke of a season. Shouldn't have won the games that they did. And then he got found out a couple of months later when Leicester collapsed. And that's what happens if you base on results and emotion and not the statistics. Even though it would have been pretty harsh to sack him after winning the league, I will admit that. But before we go on to that, I think I'll pass back over to Martin.
Right, so round the table. So this might actually roll on a bit, so I'll try to keep it to 20-30 seconds each. It's been in the news over the past couple of days. I think it's been spoken about for years, actually. The new Euro League. Now, this is the top 6 teams in England, 3 teams in Italy, and a few other teams in the top leagues in the world. Rangers and Celtic weren't mentioned. So, is this a good idea? Or not? James, what's your 30 seconds for your feelings on this? Because Gary Neville completely just demoralised it.
No. Well, yes and no. Yes, because it means Celtic's got more chance of getting into the Champions League next season. No, because football ultimately is about the fans. It was Jock Stein, Celtic manager, who said football is nothing without the fans, and that is necessary. That is the truth of the matter. Football would be ruined if you couldn't go and support your team when they're playing away from home because you have to pay for flights every 2 weeks. That's just not what football is. And one of my favourite weekends in the footballing calendar is the FA Cup third round, when the big teams go to your non-league teams. And that's what football should be about. It is about communities and how that club brings communities together. This is the elites appeasing the elites for money. Fans have got no regard in this. Fans aren't taken into account in this mindset. It makes the rich boys richer and the poor poorer, and that's why we should be against it.
So that was a Conservative saying that. Right, so Bruce, can I get your feelings on this after the finished this?
Can we not do topics like this because it involves me and James agreeing and I don't like it, and can we just stop it? Because we've worked so hard over the past episodes. No. We've worked so hard over the past episodes to have the topics have been, they've just fallen out to be brilliant. And James and I always get a bit of debate, and now I'm going to have to stand united, which is something I don't like. I don't like that word united. Right? We're going to have to anyway. So
you know, sport my United.
I agree with James, although I think it's ironic that the Tory in the group is talking about the rich making the richer a bad thing, because that's the whole thing. But anyway, so as James says, it's the Brora Rangers beating Hearts. It's the Auchinleck Talbot getting the chance to go up against the bigger teams in the Scottish Cup that brings these small communities and small towns such excitement on those. When they reach those points, you don't get that playing Juventus and Inter Milan every couple of weeks, give or take. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, that's a pretty crap idea, if I'm honest. I can see why the elite would want to do it, but as James says, in terms of the fans, and you've just mentioned, Martin, that it's an entertainment, but to the point that it's the fans that are at the centre of it, isn't it? It's the fans that pay the money. It's the fans that come in the turnstiles, and well, unless you're Celtic over the next few weeks, it's the fans that pay the season ticket money. So yeah, no, it's a pretty crap idea, isn't it? Yeah, it's not a non-starter for me.
It sounds very American to me. Yes. About this big league with the big names that you can't get relegated from. I was like, we don't want the NFL to be the football rules here. Relegation is part of our sport, and we want it to stay that way. So please don't change the rules.
As much as you hate to see sort of teams like Hamilton sort of playing in the top league, they sort of earned their right to be there, even though they bring like 30 fans and they're dog shit. Anyway, so I have my feelings on this, that if Rangers and Celtic were involved in it and were able to get Rangers and Celtic out of the Scottish League, I would be all for it. Just get the ugly sisters out of Scottish football and let her do her thing after that. but it is a pish idea, really, start to finish. It is a money-grabbing, stupid idea. They're talking the big six in England. It's not even about the top 6 teams in England. They're including Arsenal. Arsenal are pish. I mean, you've got Leicester, you've got Villa, you've got Everton. All these teams are above Arsenal, and Arsenal are supposed to be including this.
Tottenham was also included, to highlight your point.
Yes, but they're currently sitting above Arsenal. So it's a complete glorified shithousery that anybody should be even considering this league. The whole aspect of an atmosphere in football. We've missed the atmosphere in football the last couple of weeks. It's not the home fans that bring an atmosphere a lot of times, it's the away fans. The away fans to actually fill a stand to think you're not going to get Man United, well, probably Man United fans. You're not going to get Arsenal fans going to Inter Milan one week and then Juventus 2 weeks after that, filling the fucking Emirates. And Man City are just as bad. I mean, a complete stupid idea that was never going to get off the ground, and they've been talking about it for years. And all the leagues have now came together to condemn any kind of league like that. But the actual point that's been put at the table is it just baffles. They've not taken into consideration any fans. They've not taken into consideration anything. It's a completely money-based decision. Let's make more money. All the big teams playing the big teams. No relegations. We'll all make money every year. Doesn't matter who wins and who loses. Let's just go make money and roll a boot in the money baths. And if Celtic and Rangers want to be involved with it, fair enough, I'm all for it. Get them into Scottish football. If not, then it's a stupid idea. It's never going to get off the ground.
I think I agree with that totally. It's money before principles, essentially.
All these teams that are supposedly built on a community. You look at Liverpool, you'll never walk alone. All the working together. Man United built from all the communities around it. And they're just going to shit on them and just say, fuck yous, you'll take a football, a European league that we didn't deserve to be in most of the time. You look at Man United, Arsenal, Tottenham, they're not playing top of the league football with it. They're right to be forming a league of the elite because they are the elite. You need to win leagues, get up the table to merit the chance to play in a league. Oh wait, but the Champions League is already there, it's all set out already for it. Although the Champions League is a bit of a shithousery as well because it should be the champions playing champions, not 4 teams to one league and 2 teams to another league. Top place gets into a Champions League because it's a Champions League.
I agree with that as well. We would have been there 9 seasons in a row. But we weren't.
Oh, what a shame.
I know, it was. That would have been lots of money for Scottish football and coffers for this season.
And the coefficients rising.
Yes. Well, I think next season is the winners of the SPFL get into the Champions League automatically, which is another reason why Celtic will spend money in the rebuild.
Sure, Hibs will compete that year.
Yes. But before we go full circle and start talking about my team's disappointing season, I think it's just time to say thank you for watching this week's episode of the Sports Hut podcast with the 3 of us, which is higher than the attendance will be in English football after the Big 6 leave. So, yes, thanks for watching and let us know your thoughts on Celtic, Rangers, Formula 1 and why expected goals is better than results.
What's our podcast?